All right, so get this. We've got snow in Hawaii.
Snow in Hawaii.
Yeah, this week, Mauna Kea, it's the tallest mountain there, got a couple inches of snow.
Wow, a winter wonderland in Hawaii. That's not the typical image that comes to mind.
Definitely not. But, even though it's unusual, it's not totally unheard of for Mauna Kea, right?
Sure, I mean, it's over 13,800 feet high.
Whoa.
Yeah, at that elevation, it's going to be cold up there no matter what time of year it is.
So it's all about that altitude.
Pretty much, yeah.
So this time a weather system moved in, brought some moisture and cold air, and boom, snow on a tropical mountain.
Makes sense.
You know what else is interesting is that nobody actually lives on the summit of Mauna Kea.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But it's a really important place in Hawaiian culture.
I can imagine, yeah.
In native Hawaiian mythology, Mauna Kea is considered sacred ground. It's seen as like the firstborn son of the sky father and the earth mother.
Wow, that's fascinating.
And it's also an incredibly valuable site for scientific research. Well, because the skies are so clear and the air is so dry, it's one of the best places in the world for astronomical observation.
That makes sense.
Yeah, all those telescopes up there are doing some really serious work, leading to major discoveries. I actually remember reading that observations from Mauna Kea even contributed to a Nobel Prize in physics.
Wow, that's impressive.
Now, on the other side of the world, we've got Mount Fuji in Japan.
Okay.
Usually it's covered in snow by early October, but this year, still bare.
No snow at all.
It's actually a record-breaking delay. The latest snowfall they've seen in over 130 years of observation.
Huh. That's pretty wild. So are we thinking these unusual weather events are just flukes? Or could they be, a sign of something bigger?
Well, that's a great question, and it's where this UN report on climate change comes in. Gives us some context to understand what's happening.
All right, so what does this UN report say?
Basically, it defines climate change as these long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns around the globe. And one of the key takeaways that really jumped out at me is that human activities are the main driver of these changes, especially over the last couple of centuries.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like, think about all the ways we depend on burning fossil fuels. Driving cars, generating electricity, heating our homes, all of that releases these greenhouse gases into the atmosphere.
Right. And those gases act like a blanket around the Earth, trapping heat and warming things up.
Exactly. And the UN report lays out the hard data. The Earth's average temperature is now about 1.2 degrees Celsius warmer than it was back in the late 1800s.
1.2 degrees. That might not seem like a lot.
True. But the UN report really stresses that even small increases can have some pretty big impacts. And it also points out that the last decade was the warmest on record, and this warming trend shows no signs of slowing down.
So what does this mean for us? What are the actual implications of this warming trend?
Well, the report gets into that. It details how climate change is affecting all sorts of things in our lives, our health, food supply, homes, even our safety and jobs.
It's really affecting everything.
Yeah. And something that really struck me is how the report emphasizes that climate change isn't affecting everyone equally. There's a real global inequality at play here.
So who's being hit the hardest?
Well, the report highlights that the 6 biggest emitters of these greenhouse gases, so China, the United States, India, the European Union, Russia, and Brazil, they're responsible for over half of all global emissions.
Wow, over half.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the 47 least developed countries, they often face the most severe consequences, but only contribute about 3% of those emissions.
That's a huge disparity.
Yeah, it really underscores that this is a global issue.
Yeah.
But the burdens and responsibilities are not shared equally. But the report's not all doom and gloom, It emphasizes that we still have a window of opportunity to limit the worst effects of climate change.
So there's still hope.
Yeah, the goal is to keep the global temperature rise below 1.5 degrees Celsius. And to do that, we need to act and act now.
So every little bit counts.
Exactly. The report really makes it clear that every fraction of a degree matters. It's a call to action, a call for global cooperation and commitment to finding solutions.
Okay, so what are those solutions? What does the UN report propose we actually do to tackle this?
Well, the report outlines this 3-pronged approach, focusing on cutting emissions, adapting to the impacts that are already happening, and financing these changes.
So it's a multifaceted approach.
Definitely. And the solutions range from individual actions to large-scale policy shifts.
Okay, so what can the average person do? What can our listeners take away from all of this? It's not just about those big global policies. It's about the things we do every day.
Individual actions.
Yeah, like switching to renewables. Solar and wind are really important.
Makes sense. Yeah. There's been a lot of buzz about electric cars and solar panels for homes. What about, dealing with the changes that are already happening? Like the report talked about rising sea levels, those extreme weather events. What can we do about those?
Adaptation measures are key. Basically, preparing and adjusting to the changes that are already in motion.
Okay.
Think building seawalls to protect coastal communities, developing crops that are drought resistant, and setting up those early warning systems for extreme weather.
So we need both mitigation, cutting those emissions, and adaptation. But all of this sounds really expensive. How do we even pay for it?
That's where financing comes in. The report stresses that we need more investment in climate action from governments and private companies.
I see.
And it also points out how crucial it is that developed countries support developing nations, helping them shift to cleaner energy and adapt to those climate impacts.
It's a huge combined effort then. So those unusual events we talked about at the start, that snowfall in Hawaii and Mount Fuji being bare, how do those fit into this bigger picture of climate change?
Well, they remind us that climate change isn't just about, data points and projections. It's already showing up in real ways that affect our world.
Right.
It's tough to directly tie any single weather event to climate change. But the report's pretty clear. We can expect more of these unusual and extreme weather patterns as things heat up.
So that snow in Hawaii, as beautiful and strange as it was, could be a sign of what's to come. A look into a future where climate change is messing with our weather in unpredictable ways.
Exactly. A wake-up call. Climate change isn't some far-off threat. It's happening now. But, the report also says we have the knowledge, the tools, and the resources to tackle this.
Okay, that's good to hear. I have to admit, sometimes it feels a bit overwhelming, all this talk about climate change.
Right.
What can one person really do?
I get that. It's a global problem. It can feel paralyzing. But the report emphasizes that individual actions do matter. We can all make choices that shrink our carbon footprint, driving less, using energy more efficiently, picking sustainable products.
I try to do those things.
Good. And we can also speak up for change in our communities and push our elected officials to do more.
So it's both. Taking personal responsibility, but also pushing for those bigger systemic changes.
You got it. It's about realizing we're all in this together and that even small actions multiplied by millions can make a difference. The report also highlights how important it is to stay informed.
Right.
Engage in that constructive dialogue about climate change. The more we understand the science and the solutions, the more we can actually do something about it.
And just ignore it and hope it goes away. Yeah. We have to be active in finding solutions.
Exactly. And that's the main point of our deep dive today. We've explored the science, the impacts, the solutions, but now it's up to each of us to take that knowledge and turn it into action.
So from that snowfall on a tropical mountain to this deep dive into climate change and what we can do, we've covered a lot.
Yeah, we have.
What's the one message you want to leave our listeners with?
The message is simple, but it's important. We have the power to shape the future. The choices we make as individuals and as a global community will determine what kind of world we leave behind for future generations.
It really puts things in perspective. And it all started with that image of snow in Hawaii. Kind of reminds us that even paradise isn't immune to these changes happening around the world.
Yeah, and it also reminds us that climate change can show up in ways we don't expect. It's not just about the sea levels rising or glaciers melting. It's also about disruptions to weather patterns, and those disruptions can affect the entire ecosystem.
We started this deep dive asking if those unusual weather events, the snow in Hawaii and Mount Fuji being bare, were signs of something bigger. And this UN report gives us a pretty clear answer.
It does. It tells us that these events, while they are fascinating in their own right, they're part of a larger pattern. And that pattern is climate change, driven by us, by human activity.
It's a lot to take in, that's for sure. But the report does offer some hope. It outlines some real solutions, pathways to a more sustainable future. And it emphasizes that we do have what we need to address this challenge. The knowledge, the tools, the resources.
We do.
So it's not really a question of can we solve this problem, it's more a question of will we? Will we make the choices, individually and collectively, to create a healthier planet for ourselves and for the generations to come?
That's the big question, isn't it? And I think this deep dive has hopefully given everyone listening the information and maybe even a little bit of inspiration to start finding those answers. It's about recognizing that our actions have consequences and that even small changes can make a difference.
We've gone from snow in Hawaii to a deep exploration of climate change, the science, and the solutions. It's been quite a journey, and I hope it leaves everyone with a sense of urgency, a commitment to taking action.
It's definitely a journey worth taking. And remember, this is just the beginning. There's so much more to explore and to learn. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged, everyone. The future of our planet really does depend on it.